Welcome to the Reconnection Club podcast, the show that helps parents heal troubled relationships with their adult sons and daughters. I'm your host, psychotherapist Tina Gilbertson. Each week, I'll offer you compassion, clarity, and personal development tips designed to help you reconnect, not only with your child, but with yourself. Now let's get started. In part one of this two-part episode about working on yourself during estrangement from an adult child, I talked about two misconceptions or myths. And today I'm going to mention two more, and then I'm going to provide some different language and ideas about how to do some effective personal work if you're able and interested. For the first two misconceptions about working on yourself, listen to episode 127 at reconnectionclub.com/127. The third misconception is that if you're working on yourself while your adult child or children are estranged, you're doing it for them. This is a little bit layered because, indeed, anything you do for you, you end up doing for them. Sort of almost accidentally. You really can't help it. It's like shoring up the foundation of a structure. When you strengthen the foundation, the whole structure is more secure. It's generally true that whatever is genuinely good for the parent is also good for the child. But there's a difference between benefiting your children as an after effect of benefiting yourself and benefiting your children at your expense. If you're thinking of working on yourself solely to make yourself more acceptable to an estranged adult child, in my opinion, you're doing yourself and them a disservice. As is often the case in life and in relationships, there's a paradox here. The more you try to heal and grow and change for your child's benefit, the less you will do so. Not because you're not trying hard enough, but because you're tending the wrong relationship. When you place your entire focus on your own personal healing, well-being, and growth during estrangement because you want those for yourself, then you'll be able to actually and comparatively effortlessly change your relationship with your adult children. Because you will vastly improve your relationship with the most important person in all of your relationships, and that's you. Your child's estrangement may, of course, provide an impetus for you to turn your attention inward. But again, if appeasing or placating your child is the only force driving you to focus on your own healing, growth, and change, you run the risk of damaging your relationship with yourself, and none of us can afford that. Most of the parents who consult with me are suffering not just from estrangement, but to some degree from a troubled relationship with themselves. So if you decide you want to do some work on yourself, don't ever do it for your adult child or anyone else. Check in with yourself first and decide what sort of change, if any, you're longing for you. Misconception number 4 is related to number 3, and in my mind, it's kind of the worst one. And it is that you're working on yourself because there is something wrong with you that needs fixing. This notion is precisely why I don't care for the phrase working on yourself. To me, it sounds like you're a dilapidated cabin that needs fixing up in order to be habitable, or a broken down jalopy that doesn't run anymore. To me personally, it just feels a little bit bad to say I'm working on myself. And as I argued in episode 122, language matters. So I prefer to use what I consider more specific and accurate terms like healing, learning, and growing. You do not need to be fixed. You do not need to be perfect. And you do not need to be anyone other than yourself. What you might need is steadfast self-compassion and unequivocal self-acceptance. I have found those to be necessary ingredients for making desirable changes. And when I say desirable changes, I mean changes that are desirable not just from the point of view of your currently estranged adult child, but changes that would improve life for you, even if you weren't estranged. Before I shift away from those two myths, I'll just repeat what they were. First, there was the myth that if you work on yourself during estrangement, you're doing it for your adult child or children. And second, that the reason you're working on yourself is because you're not good enough as you are and you need fixing up. Let's let go of those misconceptions and figure out how we can talk about making changes without insulting you or selling you short. Here are a few suggestions for what you might say and think instead of saying and thinking, I'm working on myself. Number 1, I'm working on my fill in the blank. I'm working on my attitude. I'm working on my tendency to do X. I'm working on my listening skills, etc. It's okay to work on specific goals. That seems very different to me from working on your entire being. But specific goals may be better accomplished from a place where you can say some of the following, which leads to number 2, I'm healing. Healing can be very hard work, and some would say it's work that's never completely finished. But I have both experienced intentional emotional healing myself and witnessed the process in others. Any time or attention spent on personal healing is time and attention well spent. So use the word healing if that's what's going on. Number 3, I'm learning. Maybe you're learning about intergenerational impacts of trauma, or you're learning about family dynamics that contribute to estrangement. Learning is an activity that can support your evolution, although learning in itself isn't usually sufficient to make desired changes. It's more like a pillar that supports change. Number 4, I'm practicing. Maybe you're developing emotional literacy through therapy or reading books, like my first book, Constructive Wallowing. Maybe you're putting yourself in situations that offer safe, healthy challenges to your comfort zone. That is what practicing looks like. It's active. It's behavior that is specific to your goals and is visible to you. Number 5, I'm growing. When's the last time you acknowledged your own growth? Notice the aspects of relationships that are easier for you now than they used to be a decade ago or more. Note new behaviors that you've either adopted or are working to employ. There are so many directions in which we can and do grow, and we often forget to acknowledge that growth as we move on to our next objective. If you're the parent of an estranged adult child or children, you may in fact be working on something specific, but healing, learning, practicing, and growing are the words and activities to focus on. Because this has been a 2-part series, I'd like to summarize the 4 misconceptions I highlighted over these last 2 episodes. Myth number 1, working on yourself is a separate activity from repairing your relationship with your child or children. I hope I've convinced you that's not the case. Myth number 2, it's just something nice to do while you're waiting for things to turn around. Myth number 3, you do it for your estranged adult child, not because you want to. This one is complicated, and I talked in today's episode about why that is. And myth number 4, the most harmful myth of all, working on yourself means there's something wrong with you that needs fixing. Because you are the foundation of your relationship with your adult daughter or son, working on you, as it were, equals working on that relationship. So whenever you think about this idea of working on yourself during estrangement, remember the effort that's needed from parents in most cases can best be expressed in terms of their own emotional healing, learning, practicing new behaviors with whomever is available, and growing as a person. Until next time, remember that you are a loving, lovable, and always growing human being. So please take good care of yourself. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Reconnection Club podcast, I invite you to check out reconnectionclub.com. The Reconnection Club is for parents at any stage of estrangement from their adult, child, or children. So whether you've just realized there's trouble between you, you've been living with estrangement for years, or you're newly reconciled but still walking on eggshells, the Reconnection Club is your essential resource for information, support, and continued personal growth. With our courses and workshops, expert interviews, monthly Q&A calls, and a friendly, active community, the Reconnection Club is a wonderful place to be for anyone suffering the pain of estrangement from an adult child or children. So check it out at reconnectionclub.com.